Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where I break down the lessons we can learn, as GMs and as players, from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 62, Uninviting Waters. This is a live show hosted at GenCon. Liam couldn't be there, but Ashley was able to fly in for it. At the beginning of the session, Matt talks about his other actual play show, Force Grey Giant Hunters, which is a collaboration between Wizards of the Coast and Nerdist, and has since been scrubbed from the internet. Although, I might be working on a video about that series, we may talk about that in the future if I wind up having anything interesting to say about it. And then they announced the first version of the Tal'Dorei campaign book, which we will also talk about in the future as well. Then the game opens, and Matt asks if there's any other prep the players want to do before they leave the forest to go to the rivers of the Gilded Run. Then they confirm, no, they don't need to heal, they're good. Then there's a burst of white light, and Pike appears next to them. I believe she's in her astral form, though Matt doesn't explicitly say that. It's a live show, I think it just slipped his mind to mention it. And look at that, she appears 3 minutes into the game. This is great, thank goodness Matt got her in as quickly as possible. More of this, please. The party approaches the Gilded Run. There's some confusion about how far away they are from the rivers, and somehow I wrote almost 4,000 words about that, so I had to split that off into its own video, or it was going to consume an unreasonable amount of this video, so go check that video out here if you haven't already. Vex and Vax fly over the rivers. Vax uses his wings to do so, and Vex teases him about that since he can only use his wings for 1 hour every day. I have mixed feelings about that. If you're running one of your players' characters while they're gone and you're the DM, I don't think you should have them deplete their resources like that. It's something that they can only use once per day. But on the other hand, this is a live show and it's a funny moment. It's not a big deal. And besides, we are actually not that far away from the players hitting upon their preferred method of handling the character sheets for absent players, which is going to be having another player run them instead of putting it all on Matt's plate. So if Liam is not wild about Matt using the wings like that, it almost doesn't matter because this will not be an issue in this group for very much longer. However, as Vax and Vex fly over the next river, they're forced to make wisdom saving throws, and they both fail, so they actually willingly dive into the water and start getting dragged by the current. In that video I just put out, I talked about how you need a dramatic question running underneath any D&D scene, but especially an exploration scene. This is the first thing Matt is introducing in order to make the rivers a dramatic question. Obviously, Vox Machina has a lot of powerful abilities, so crossing some rapids is not really an issue. So you have to find some way to make the rivers more of a challenge. And this is the first approach Matt takes. He makes the rivers dangerous to not just step into, but to literally cross. And so much like the Grey Marshes in Lord of the Rings, these rivers literally draw you in. And that also helps reinforce the themes of the Feywild and how it charms and hypnotizes you. We saw that a lot in the last episode we discussed, and so I really like that this danger is also tied into that same allure the Feywild has over mortal minds. But Matt doesn't overdo it. There's other stuff in the Feywild besides things that just try to mind control you, so you can have these rivers invite you in, and it doesn't feel like you're repeating something we've seen a bunch of times. It feels thematic, but not repetitive. Anyway, the twins are getting pulled away in the rapids, so the party jumps over the first river to reach the twins. They're in the second river. But Percy rolls poorly and falls into that first river. So now the twins are in one river, Percy's in another, and everybody in the river is making Constitution saving throws to avoid getting pulled under the water. Vex casts Grasping Vine and pulls herself to safety. Great move on her part. Keyleth tries to cast Control Water to part the river, but since these rivers are clearly magical, she has to try to make a wisdom check in order to override the will of the water.
Just a wisdom check.
Oh no, oh no! I just spent a lot of money on these dice today.
Wait, hold on. I've got this.
What?
Quick, everyone. Oh, what's that over there? There.
Oh, 15.
Oh, that's
What was it? Was it a 1? I rolled a 1.
You did?
Yeah. Wow. All right.
Scanlan fishes Vax out with Bigby's hand, and Grog wades in and grabs Percy. Then Scanlan uses Bigby's hand to hurl Garmelia across 5 of the rivers, where he then lands and eats shit, but he's okay. And now the party tries to figure out how they can cross the remaining rivers.
If Bigby's hand had about a minute or 10 seconds left, I've got about 9 minutes left on this Control Water spell.
All right, do the next one.
Why don't we try and move as fast as possible?
All right, then
along
do
with
it.
the chain, and maybe the immovable rod. Let's go. You guys go
All right.
first, and I'm going to try and halt the flow of as many rivers.
Make a wisdom check if you could.
Oh, jeez. Come on.
Come on, you stupid opal dice.
Is that a
What is
natural
it?
20?
What
Is
is
it a
it?
natural 20? Or
No, it's another fucking 1! What? Useless!
You guys thought it ended
Put it
last
away,
game.
Keyleth. Put it away for the rest of the night.
I spent so much money
It's got to reset. It's got to reset.
Nope.
Gotta
This is
reset.
You gotta retire that bitch.
no problem.
You just
No,
gotta
no. They just haven't been charged.
Vanish it.
Make that go away.
Put it in that box.
put it in its dice jail.
See, but
You
good.
you Percy.
I do.
Don't touch my dice, Percy.
So once again, the river resists her magic. And so the party debates coming up with a new plan. And Grog suggests just chopping down a tree and using that as a bridge, and everyone else jumps in to tell him what a bad idea that is, considering how the Feywild attacked them when Keyleth picked a flower. And he basically responds, well, come up with another plan then, because I'm bored. Now, in the hands of a less supportive player, this could be a bad move, but the vibes are good here for two reasons. One, everyone at the table is fully aware that this is a live show, and so when Travis says, let's get this moving and not fall into analysis paralysis, let's not do something boring, they all know that he's right. They can't sit and debate this endlessly. But the other reason this works so well is because Travis isn't really the type of player to actually do a plan everyone else has told him not to do, especially if it's going to negatively impact the entire party. He'll suggest it in character, he may even act like he's going to do it, but generally speaking, in a moment like this where the stakes are actually kind of high, if everyone says, no, stop, don't, he will stop. In fact, to return to the first point about this being a live show, this actually is not that different from what he does sometimes do in their typical studio games. He'll suggest a plan and go as if he's going to implement it, not necessarily because he thinks it's the best plan, but because someone needs to do something, someone needs to get the ball rolling. And often, seeing Grog about to do something makes the other players either say, okay, cool, that works, Grog took care of it. Or they'll say, wait, no, don't. But then they'll stop trying to find the perfect plan or debate potential pitfalls endlessly, and instead they'll realize, well, we have to do something, and it'll unstick them. Oddly, Grog's bad plans, or even just his overly simple plans, sometimes give the party a floor. Like, okay, we think that might be a bad idea, but that's the plan to beat so far, so what can we come up with that's better than this plan? That shouldn't be that hard. And it helps a lot. And sure enough, they do come up with a plan. Scanlan and Pike take the immovable rod and teleport to the other side of the rivers. Then Vex can shoot an arrow over to them with a rope tied onto it, and the rest of the party can all tie themselves to the rope, so if anybody starts to get pulled into the river, they'll all be linked together, and they can help keep anyone from getting pulled away. So they implement this plan, and Vex shoots her arrow to the gnomes.
The rope goes lax, meaning it's to be carried into the water, and you can see the tension as the river itself seems to be trying to pull the rope underneath the rapids.
I hold the other side of the rope.
Okay, you begin pulling it up, and it's hard to pull up. The actual river is almost pulling the rope under its
I grab it
surface.
too.
All right,
Yeah.
so you guys, I need both of you guys to go ahead and make strength checks together.
Can I try and stop the currents once again?
The
Suppress
one,
them?
what's the range of control water?
300 feet.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, calm waters,
And,
calm.
and hook it to the immovable rod there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot that whole part of the plan.
Oh,
What the hell?
Oh
what
my
are you doing?
God.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
No! You can't use it anymore. You're not allowed to use that dice anymore.
Just throw it off stage. Just
No,
throw it.
it costs like $10 another dice? I am not giving you all that dice.
What the hell?
Say it.
Son of a bitch.
Say it. What was
Come
it?
on, it was a one. So it was a
I'm
one?
assuming it's a low roll.
Yeah.
It's a fucking one.
I figured.
For the third time in a row.
Man, the magic of these rivers is powerful. Yikes. Vex and Percy are able to grab the rope and keep it from falling into the river, and Pike ties it off to the immovable rod, based on a suggestion from Scanlan, because Pike has a sailing background, so she would know knots. Again, what a great example of Sam being a supportive player. He found yet another way to invite Ashley to feel like she's participating in this plan, and ties it into her background. That's really smart player behavior. The non-gnomes tie themselves together, and they're able to cross several rivers, and when they reach Garmelie, they tie him into their loop as well. Keyleth does succeed at controlling the next river, which is good. It's good that she's rolling better finally. And they rush across. As they step through the riverbed, Grog steps on something that stirs as he does so they scurry through as quickly as possible, trying to ignore whatever living creature they just walked on top of. At this point, Matt says there are only 3 rivers left, and Scanlan asks if they're multiplying, because for some reason, Matt never actually told them how many rivers there were between the party and the Shademirk Bog until now, almost an hour into gameplay. So, at this moment, they didn't realize there were that many left to cross. It seems strange that Matt never said that, although there is an element of you never asked that could play a role. But honestly, I'm actually wondering if Matt even had a strict number of rivers in his head. Because it's possible he was just feeling it out based on what would be the most dramatic answer during the session, and what they would actually have time for. Because with this being a live show, he might not want a strict number of rivers, because it could lock him into something he'd have a hard time retconning if they start running late. Anyway, they part the next river successfully, and then a gigantic crocodile bursts out of the water. It seems to be made from both flesh and plant matter, like some of the creatures from the movie Annihilation. It's part tree, part animal. It immediately attacks Grog, grapples him, and drags the entire party across the next river. So hey, one more river down. Again, this feels like a strange move, unless you think maybe Matt is repositioning the party so there's only 1 or 2 rivers between them and the gnomes right before the fight begins. Because now, the party is in a much better range in case Pike wants to shoot some of her spells, or she wants to get in close to heal someone. She has that option now. Pike and Scanlan won't have to be stuck behind these rivers and unable to participate. Plus, Matt has a battle map already on the table that only has 1 river on it, and once Pike and Scanlan teleported across all the rivers, he might have had to wait until they got closer so they could actually use this map properly and still have the gnomes able to participate. So it might be that he had the crocodile drag them the last remaining bit just so the map would be accurate. Matt also timed this fight pretty well. He deployed it just over an hour into a 3-hour game. He knows D&D combat takes a long time and isn't always the most fun thing to watch, so he made sure it happened early enough in the fight that they have a good chance of getting through it in this session. He also only introduced 1 enemy, and again, that is really smart. Not only do his players get a chance to feel badass as they deal with a more reasonable challenge, especially when contrasted with the pixie fight from the last episode where they kind of got their ass handed to them, but it also streamlines combat to have only 1 enemy on the field, which really helps with the limited time frame they have. And it is initiative, so here are the highlights. Keyleth casts Speak with Plants, and Matt prepares her that it might not do what she expects it to do. It might not do what it normally does with non-animated plants. But then he also says, okay, so you cast the spell, what are you doing?
So, Speak with Plants generally works with
Plants.
plants.
Sure.
Well, you never know.
For
He
like,
appears to be kind of.
He's got roots. He's got roots, yo.
he
He's got
does.
roots.
He does. However, in the purposes of this type of circumstance, it's usually meant for like smaller plants that have no sentience that you can normally interact with, and like roses and petunias.
Well, I've done this
But you
before.
can probably
We're talking to the tree
you
ants.
can probably communicate with it. Yes.
Well,
I'm saying issuing commands on this might be a little more difficult for the rest of the spells.
what if I cast it at a higher level? Would that help?
This is not a spell that can be cast at a higher level, unfortunately. So what do you want to do? So you're casting Speak with Plants.
So my read on this, and this is purely a guess, I have no other insight besides what you just saw, but it seems like he's saying, the spell normally allows you to have a full conversation with a plant, but this plant already has some consciousness, so it won't allow the plant to respond like the spell normally would, but maybe the plant can understand you if you cast this. That's as much as I'm willing to confirm and maybe as much as I'm willing to allow. That's not a huge difference having the plant just understand you versus be able to respond, but it is still worth mentioning. However, I do think he could have made it a little clearer, because for most of that clip, it kind of sounds like he's saying, maybe don't cast the spell because it won't work like you expect, but then at the end, he makes it clear he's managing her expectations, but not inviting her to retcon casting the spell. So the lesson here is kind of the same one I wound up making a whole video about. Make the core question to the players just as clear as you can, and this isn't as clear as it could be. Obviously, I'm not just doing my usual armchair quarterbacking of an 8-year-old D&D game, because this is also a live show with a set runtime, so Matt had a lot going on, it was maybe hard for everybody to hear each other. There's a lot of mitigating factors here. I am not trying to pretend that this is a perfect scenario and he's absolutely a terrible game master because of this critique. As always, this is not meant to be an indictment of Matt. And as we're going to see, if I'm right and this is what Matt meant, Marisha seemed to understand that. She understands it the way that I just interpreted it. So if she understood him, what's the problem? Like, what's the critique here? Why am I harping on this? But I do think that we can learn from this, because even without all these mitigating circumstances, this can still happen at our games too. Matt maybe could have framed the question more clearly to demonstrate the spell was still going to have some impact, but it would just be limited. AKA, it was not going to be completely able to end the combat. Maybe that could have sounded something like this. As you cast the spell, you feel it make contact with the mind of this creature. And already it starts to feel different from usual. Normally the spell almost seems to animate the plant with near-human intelligence for the duration of the spell, but this creature is already somewhat sapient. So you start to suspect that it can understand you, but it might not be able to respond, and it might only respond to simple concepts. That might be as much as it's able to understand based on its primitive level of intelligence. But it can understand you, so what would you like to do? What would you like to say to it? But like I said, even without that clarification, Marisha still seems to have gotten the gist.
I'm gonna say, hey, you spit that out of your mouth right now, mister! You don't know where that's been. And trust me, I do.
Make an intimidation check.
No, don't do it. Don't.
Do it. Do it. That thing. Do it.
No way. There's no fucking way.
One. It's a two.
I have to be completely real with you. I've only been including these clips of all of Marisha's terrible rolls because they lead up to that moment, and that reaction from Taliesin and Sam is so funny to me. Poor Marisha is having such bad luck with these dice.
Can I move kind of towards that tree away from the river that also wants to eat us?
Sure.
Yeah.
You get that far before the rope in your midsection stops you.
Yeah, we can only move so far. We are.
Okay.
Oh shit, we're all tied
Yeah, we're all
together.
tied together. Yeah.
Grog finally gets to attack an enemy for the first time in 4 episodes, so that's pretty cool. However, the croc heals up by absorbing moisture from the ground through its root feet. Then it swallows Grog whole and drags the daisy chain of people closer to its mouth because they're all tied together. Percy puts his gun into the beast's mouth and pulls the trigger and rolls a 1, which is a jam. But in addition to jamming the gun, Matt has him roll damage on Grog, which makes sense. If you're going to blindly fire a gun into an enclosed space where your tallest, broadest friend is currently trapped and unable to escape, and you roll a 1, that does feel like a logical consequence. Like, I don't even usually do anything with critical failures in my games, and even I would be hard-pressed not to have Percy roll damage on Grog in this scenario, because there needs to be a consequence for failing when that's what you were trying to do. Scanlan casts a magic missile from his wand using a bunch of charges to cast the spell at 6th level, but rather than roll damage on the beast, he sends the missiles to break the ropes connecting all the players together. So now all of his friends have the freedom to move about the battlefield and get into position. This is not just great strategy, but it's also a terrific support move. If you're playing a support character, take notes, because this kind of thing is great player behavior. Keyleth casts Blight at 5th level, and plant creatures have disadvantage on that saving throw, and they take max damage from the spell. And so the beast fails thanks to disadvantage and takes 64 damage. Grog slams the Titanstone knuckles together and doubles in size, while still inside the creature's throat. And it turns out that winds up being enough to get thrown up. The croc grabs onto Percy with his jaws and then stings Vex with a stinger that it apparently has in its tail, as she starts to see the landscape in Technicolor, sees faces warping. She's essentially under the confusion spell, and so she just runs into the river, even though she makes her save at the end of her turn. So she's no longer confused, thank goodness. She's no longer high, she's just potentially drowning. Then they actually take a mid-combat break, because D&D combat takes a long time, and they're now almost 2 hours into a 3-hour game. Sometimes you just gotta take the breaks where you can, especially when you have a crowd of people watching your game and some of them might actually need to go pee. Admittedly, that specific aspect is maybe not all that applicable to our own games, but it is valuable to see how Matt is keeping an eye on the clock throughout this game. I really appreciate that. When they come back from the break, Pike is able to land a Flame Strike spell on the croc, and then Keyleth casts Blight again at 4th level and gets the how do you want to do this.
You hear the phantom chanting in the back of your head as
She describes the croc getting petrified like a dead tree. It's really cool. One of my favorite kills in the series, actually. Trinket is able to pull Vex out of the river, and the party is safe. Now, because Grog is still enlarged for almost a minute, he hurls each of his party members across the last river. He even grabs Garmelie and jumps over with him, even though Garmelie has no plans or desire to go into the bog with them. His deal was to bring them to the bog, so he's out, he's good now. But Grog still brings him along, and again, we can contrast this with the chop down a tree plan. Travis knows his fellow players will have no issue with him bringing Garmelie along, so he just does it. And it also gets a huge reaction from the crowd. It turns out, being a button pusher means your style of play lends itself especially well to live shows. Who'd have thought? Anyway, Garmelie warns the party to keep moving. Don't stand still, or the swamp will try to claim you. He says his goodbyes, and Vex hugs him and pats him down. Turns out he had pocketed the statue of the Onyx dog, the one they found in the Pixie Village. You know he had to try, right? Anyway, he says his goodbyes, he turns invisible, and he leaves. Moving through the swamp is actually extremely challenging due to the muck sucking them in. Now, Vex can move across it effortlessly due to her ranger abilities. And, by the way, when Matt asks what the ability does specifically, both he and Laura go to the books to look it up, but Laura gets to it first and reads it off. Man, Matt's players are on fire today. But because she can move across it effortlessly, she gives the broom to the gnomes so they can fly without getting sucked in, because if they're getting sucked into their knees, the gnomes are probably getting sucked into at least their waist, and that could be really dangerous for them. Again, Really nice moment of generosity from the players. I really appreciate that. But given how goopy the swamp is, Grog asks about Ukarot, the werewolf chief they made a deal with in the last episode. How's he going to follow them through the swamp? Matt calls for perception checks, and they see something that very well might be Ukarot drop out of some branches and duck behind a tree kind of far away, following them. Matt is essentially telling them, don't worry about how, but he'll follow you, and he'll be fine. Through the branches, Vex sees a thicker tree with a dull glow near the base of it. Vex and Trinket go scout it out, and it looks like a hut, and the glow is a window or something. Vex returns and says maybe it's pixies, let's leave it alone. However, the party also doesn't know where to go inside the Shade Murk, so Percy suggests they should ask whoever lives here where they can find the cancerous tree. Scanlan wants to do recon first before asking directions. He's also curious about what's inside, but he doesn't want to die. He's kind of conflicted. So Scanlan and Pike volunteer to fly over on the broom. That way they can easily escape if something inside is creepy or evil. Vex does not like this plan, and she's clear that, in no small part, that's because she does not want to lose the broom. But Grog, lover of pushing buttons and hater of circular debates that don't go anywhere, encouraged them to just send the gnomes in.
Little bits go. Little bits.
All right, Pikey. Let's go knock on the door and get killed.
If you fucking get my broom lost because you told me not to go, I'm gonna murder you. And this is not in character. This is me telling you
I just want to say that was a death threat in front of 1,000 people.
Meanwhile, Keyleth climbs into a tree and casts Commune with Nature. She learns a few things, but the most noteworthy is that the source of the swamp's corruption is to the northwest of them. Now they have that information, the party debates calling the gnomes back. Like, they don't really need to ask for directions anymore if they have a trajectory. But again, I don't think Mersha wanted to step on what the other players were doing, so she says, no, it's fine, let them explore. But other members of the party are getting bad vibes from the treehouse, so most of them urge the gnomes to come back by calling to them through their earrings. But the gnomes just want to do a flyby, just to see inside the window. They're curious. Inside, they see a cozy home with a fireplace, although there are also some dead animals hung to dry. And there are baskets of plants and roots hanging from the ceiling. There's a large chair, and they see a hand with, quote, impossibly long fingers and hooked nails with dried wrappings hanging from the wrist and elbow. If you don't speak Matt Mercer, impossibly long fingers means it's a hag. That's how he says hag, basically. The hand reaches out and takes a teacup off the table next to the chair, and the cast is freaking out. And Taliesin in particular is asking, do you describe what you see over the earring? And when Scanlan says no, they're just going to turn tail and run, Taliesin is practically eating his hand. Because I think he's figured out this is a hag of some sort, and or made the connection that this is the Hut of Wodena, which Garmili warned them about. But he's being good, he's not metagaming. This is basically the same thing that we saw when the party found the fragments of statuary around the obelisk back in episode 48. In this moment, just like in that episode, Taliesin really, really wants to share his insight with the group. But he also knows that his character has absolutely no reason to weigh in on this unless his allies verbalize what they're seeing through their earrings. Terrific player behavior. Once again, the cast is on fire in this episode. Anyway, the gnomes are freaked out, so they fly away, but they hear someone snap their fingers, probably the hag, and the door to the dwelling opens. The gnomes keep flying away, but the broom slows, stops, and drops to the mud. Scanlan turns himself and Pike invisible, and then they run back to the party and hand the broom off to Vex. And when she hears that the broom stopped working, she kind of panics.
Clutching the broom in your hands as you emit the phrase that you've known to bring it to vibrant magical life.
Oh no.
The broom jumps to life.
Thank you, Matt, for saving a marriage.
Listen, I say this as a devoted husband and a loving father. I've never loved anything the way Vex loves that broom. And that's where Matt ends the episode, with the cast outside the hut, looking at it with some fear, but far enough that they could probably bug out if they wanted to. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss the finale of the Feywild arc, episode 63, The Echo Tree. However, you should absolutely subscribe because I've got some great videos coming out between now and then. And who knows, maybe there'll be a 30-second moment from the Echo Tree that sends me into another spiral, and I write another bonus video, who can say? Which is all the more reason to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of my videos. And ring the bell as well. I might have some bonus videos coming up on some non-standard days, so if you ring the bell, you'll get notified whenever I post a new video and you won't miss an upload. You can also help support this channel by signing up for my Patreon, join my Discord server to hang out with other awesome people, sign up for my newsletter. I've got some cool updates coming soon. I know I keep saying that. I've been cooking on a few things in the background. I actually think a lot of my updates are going to hit around the same time, which is very funny timing. So make sure to sign up for the newsletter to stay up to date with those. Make sure you're registered to vote. It only takes a minute. And click here to watch my video where I throw out a bunch of my old D&D notebooks. Until next time, play fair and have fun.